Hello and welcome to How Would You Rate Your Pain? We will be exploring life, loss, love, and the power of resilience. I am Dr. Tiffany Bartell. Thank you for listening, and I can't wait to go on this journey with you. Okay, hello, and welcome to another episode of How Would You Rate Your Pain? I am here with a new friend, Rabbi Lewis, and we're going to talk about lots of different things today. We are excited to feature this episode for Pride Month, as we're going to talk about social justice advocacy and those kind of topics. So, Rabbi Lewis, thank you for being here.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about what you do here in the community and your congregation?
Yeah, I'm the rabbi of Mizpah congregation at 923 Macaulay, just down the street from the studio where we are recording this. And a rabbi is a spiritual leader, very much like a pastor or a priest for a religious institution. And our synagogue is a Reform synagogue, which is one of the more progressive on the liberal side of Jewish tradition and belief and practice. And so we try to bring the ancient text and the ancient traditions and bring them into modern times, adapt, sometimes reject certain things that just no longer mesh with our response to living in these times. And so it's an ongoing, we're very conscious about calling it reform because it's in a constant state of reforming. And to say reformed, which a lot of people will say mistakenly, means that it was sort of done and we're frozen in time.
But time and society changes all the time. And so, I love the fact that your congregation offers, or this, form of your religion offers like space for constant evolution.
That's right. And we've been in Chattanooga since 1866.
Wow.
It's a long time.
That's a long time.
Yeah. And we've been on Macaulay since 1928. So we've been established here as one of the, main religious institutions for a long time. We're among the oldest religious institutions in the city.
Wow. I wouldn't have known that. And I had the honor of being able to get a mini tour, I think, because I feel like your building is so vast. And it's just a beautiful building, but I wouldn't have known that it was here in town. And I think we're so much creatures of habit that, we only find the places we're looking for. And so, it's a beautiful, beautiful
people
synagogue.
Drive past us all the time and say, I didn't realize that there was a synagogue there. And it's a shame because we have a beautiful building and a beautiful front. And, and I think even more important, we're trying to teach important values inside for our members and also to build partnerships in our community and to share those values.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how did you get to Chattanooga? Because you are not from here. And those of you who are listening to the audio and not the video, you're here representing. There's two main features in Rabbi Lewis's office of the synagogue. One I was immersed in. The second, I need to come back and get a proper tour.
Well, I tell people that I have three religions: Judaism, Disney, and Kansas City sports. And they're not always in that order. It depends.
Depends on the season.
During March Madness, and also
shifts.
Super Bowl.
Yeah. Super Bowl's been fun for Kansas City.
And right now the Royals don't look so bad. So we're really excited. It's a good year.
It's a good year. Yeah. So he's here repping Kansas City right now with his shirt because I forgot to tell him.
University of Kansas Jayhawks, my alma mater. So,
okay. Yeah. So were you born in Kansas City?
I was born on the Missouri side of Kansas City. And when I was not even a year old, my family moved basically across the street, across the state line into the suburbs of Kansas City on the Kansas side.
Mm-hmm. So did you always know you wanted to be a rabbi, or what was kind of that process?
No, and frankly, I'm still not sure.
If you had a chance to play sports for Kansas City in some way, you're like, I don't know.
Oh my goodness! Well, I was never good enough. I did wrestle in high school, and Kansas did not have a wrestling team. And I only got through the freshman year in the baseball, so I knew that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. You were meant to be a devoted fan. That's okay.
More or less. But when I was younger, really my focus was not wanting to be involved in Jewish education or living as a professional Jew. My mother of blessed memory was a Jewish educator, so not clergy, but she was more or less a community educator, helping people run their Sunday schools and their religious schools, providing curriculum as a consultant. And basically she wore a lot of hats through the course of that work. My brother went to Brandeis in a master's program that took him into becoming what they call it Jewish communal service. So working in the nonprofit Jewish agencies and also education. And he's currently the executive director of the Jewish Federation in Kansas City.
Wow.
And he used to work for Hillel with college students, and he's also worked in education. So I was always the one that said, yeah, great for you. I'm not really interested in becoming a professional Jewish person. And that changed at a period of time in my life, because my undergrad was business administration with a minor in French language. And I went to graduate school in Europe and a small business school in France.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, international commerce, here I come. And there it went. So it didn't really work out for me. But I maintained the language skills for the most part. And at one point in my life, I was actually working part-time for my brother, doing some teaching on the side. And my full-time job was working for a diesel engine company. And I was using all my vacation and sick time to be able to go away on these weekend retreats. This was in California, so we were going to Simi Valley about once or twice a month on average. And I really found that I loved doing education, teaching young people about Jewish traditions, and started to switch. Said, well, if I'm using all of my vacation and sick time to do this, why don't I actually make this my profession, so that my vacation and sick time can then become vacation and or sick time.
That's a lot of work you were doing.
And then I decided that the spiritual path and also the study path, which becoming a rabbi, it's more than just the spiritual journey. It's also becoming acquainted with the wisdom literature and the legal literature and navigating that as well. So it's thought, philosophy, theology, worship, everything all in one.
So do you go to, is it kind of like graduate school, or what does that look? Okay.
So the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. It's a very long title. There was a merger back in the day. There's no
acronym at all for it now?
No, well, like HUCJIR.
Okay, that's still, that doesn't help at all.
Nobody calls it Hukjur, so far as I know. There was a merger between the Jewish Institute of Religion and the Hebrew Union College, and so now it's hyphenated.
It's together. Hey.
Yeah, so it's a 5-year program.
Wow.
After you get your bachelor's degree. So my bachelor's is from Kansas. And
did you get a second bachelor's in religious studies, or did your business one?
Right. Just any bachelor's degree will count, and then you have to take tests, proficiency in Hebrew, also write essays and interview. They did a psychological evaluation.
Really?
I passed.
Here you are today.
So the first year is spent at a campus in Jerusalem.
Wow.
So my wife and I were actually fairly newly married at the time. We picked up, took our dog. We were living in Memphis, went to Jerusalem.
That feels like a big change.
Massive.
Like a big regional change.
It's the honeymoon we never actually got, which in some ways, we had this really cool apartment that was near the windmill. If anybody knows the Jerusalem layout, the Montefiore windmill, which is just on the outskirts of the old city. It's a famous, old, beautiful neighborhood. And it's about a 15-minute walk from the school that I went to, and 20-minute walk from the old city if we wanted to go there. So really well situated. And
you spent 1 year there.
1 academic year, and intensive Hebrew, history, trying to get absorbed in the Israeli culture, early introduction to Talmudic literature and Midrashic literature, sort of a catch-all in some ways, as a way of preparing you for what you were going to experience and study stateside.
Wow.
But there's no better place to be immersed in Hebrew than living in Israel.
I would assume so.
Yeah.
Did you already speak and write in Hebrew?
Little bit.
Okay.
Little bit. Not.
And you left a lot of it.
Somehow they broke us into, based on our admissions test, they broke us into classes.
Okay.
And it was by the Hebrew letters of the alphabet. So like Aleph through Hey, like 1 through 5.
Yeah.
Somehow I tested into the Daled, which is the 4th out of 5.
Oh.
And I don't know how that happened.
Okay.
But
you must have known more than you thought.
Facility with language and testing well, I think, is what got me in.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of logic that goes into a written test in Hebrew. So
Okay.
I did okay.
Yeah. So then when you came back to the States, where were you? Did you finish your studies?
So you were able to choose between New York, Cincinnati, or Los Angeles. And Cincinnati was the original campus, the oldest, the founded campus. And so I chose Cincinnati and spent 4 years in Cincinnati studying and learning there. So
wow. Yeah. Yeah. So then did you, work there, or like, how do you get placed with a congregation? What was your journey to getting to Chattanooga?
Well, the system has changed a few times since I was ordained in 2008. But initially, and actually, I almost came to Chattanooga in 2008.
Okay. Yeah.
One of the first interviews that I had, they would bring all the graduating seniors to one of the campuses. And that year we were in Los Angeles. And congregations that were looking to hire a newly ordained rabbi would send representatives. And it was like a speed dating thing, right? You could have, I think over the course of 3 days, I had 12 interviews or something like that.
Wow. Okay.
And then I met a group from Chattanooga that was there interviewing, and they invited me for a site visit, which we came
to this
to Mizpah congregation. Yeah. And at that time, multiple things. As we were about to have our first kid. Actually, we didn't fully know yet through an adoption story. That's a long story, but that was definitely within our plans.
Okay.
And my wife had family in California.
Okay.
And there was also a good opportunity there, and I would have been able to learn under a senior rabbi, be an assistant rabbi for a few years.
That's nice.
And it just felt like the right move at that time. And so we ended up going there instead of to Chattanooga, which was a real opportunity. My dear friend, Rabbi Bill Tepper, actually ended up coming here and had a wonderful, I guess, like 9 years serving here. And we're still good friends.
Yeah. So did you always know that you wanted to be, in the Jewish Reform, side of Judaism, or
more or less? Yeah. I grew up in a Reform synagogue, was in the Reform youth movement, which is called NIFTY. And it was a very strong part of what my Jewish identity is and was and is. For a period of time, when my wife and I were first married, we did join a conservative synagogue. Yeah. And we were thinking about becoming more traditional, and we discovered that it wasn't right for us. And so when it came time to say, where do I want to apply to rabbinical school, it was always HUC.
Okay.
JIR.
Yes. The name could be workshopped, but I like the fact that it tells you everything that happens there. So it's like a really good synopsis, abstract, right in the name. That's really good. Yeah,
like there were 2 competing schools in Cincinnati and New York at one time, and that's what happened. They decided, let's get together. Yeah.
And keep everything. Yeah. I like that. So, we had talked when we met, last time about the history of, so it's called the Jewish Reform. How would I say that correctly? If I was to talk about like the form of Judaism that you
Reform Judaism.
Reform Judaism. Okay.
Yeah.
So we talked about Reform Judaism and its history with civil rights and social justice advocacy. I'd love for you to tell the listeners a little bit about that, because I learned so much, and it definitely explains a lot of the good that you do in this community and your prioritization of that.
I'm very proud that the Reform Jewish movement has always been very forward-thinking in social justice causes. And in the 60s, right at the same time as the civil rights movement was gearing up, we established what's called the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism in Washington, D.C. And actually, I learned just recently, since you and I met, that part of the deal with someone was like donating the building where it was going to be housed. They said, we want to make sure that you are deeply involved in the civil rights movement.
Wow.
And
that was so long ago, in a time where, they were having not the conversations that we're having, today, but they were already thinking about that. I think that's quite remarkable.
And they were able to establish close ties. A lot of the early voting rights legislation and civil rights legislation was actually written in the conference room of the Religious Action Center.
Wow.
With the leading Black leaders, leading Jewish leaders, leading, social justice leaders of the time from all faiths and all groups. That became a central meeting place.
Yeah. So what do you think, kind of fed that interest in pursuing, rights for everyone and being concerned about what's happening to other people groups that is unjust or unsafe, unfair?
One of the descriptions of Reform Judaism has been to refer to it as prophetic Judaism, or the Judaism of the prophets. And, having recently reread some of the prophets, you can't always say that they're all great, but or everything in there is
sad,
good.
Honestly.
Yeah. We're actually struggling with Joshua at the moment, but but that means that more or less speaking truth to power. Thinking about people like the prophet Nathan, who confronted King David. You are that man, right, who stole the sheep from another man, and when you call out injustice, that you can make the world a better place. And it really begins there, I think.
Yeah, I think, one thing that's kind of stood out to me, there's so many conversations, especially that happen in this country, around religion, and it almost feels sometimes like religion's kind of, put on an opposite side of the fence from advocacy and making sure that everybody gets to live in peace, in a way that makes sense to them. I think, is it in Isaiah maybe, where he talks about oppression and how, if we participate in oppression, or we even just don't hear the voices of the oppressed, that, that actually puts a barrier between us and God hearing our prayers. And I think I must have heard that, and I'm probably paraphrasing it terribly. I think I must have heard that in high school or something. And it kind of just always stood out to me of not only should I not be participating in hurting other people or, any kind of oppression, but also if I hear it and I see it and I don't do something, that I'm also a part of the problem. And I think that that's what makes so much beautiful sense about how your congregation lives in this community. Because that just makes sense, I think, to my mind. If you see
something that's wrong, you shall surely rebuke thy neighbor. That is a key commandment.
Okay.
And the obligation to rebuke is not the most paramount command, but it's up there, right? And that is, if you stand idly by, there's another one, right? Don't stand idly by the blood of your neighbor. Then you are complicit. And it's incredibly important that you speak up.
Yeah. So, thinking about all that, the Jewish people have endured over time, there's so much trauma and so much pain and hardship. How does that, work as you advocate for other groups? It seems like that would be very hard to not always feel like you're advocated for historically.
Well, our history has a large part in shaping advocacy.
Okay.
And that is living in the United States of America. The Jewish community here recognizes what a unique place this has been, because there's never been institutional anti-Semitism, never an institutional separateness of the Jewish community as stated by the federal government.
Okay.
for a brief period of time, the Jews got kicked out of Tennessee and Kentucky.
Oh, no. Sorry.
I'm laughing about it. It was really an awful, tragic thing. General Grant during the war,
you did tell me that like the coping mechanism of a lot of, Jewish people is humor. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
A little dark humor sometimes.
It was real. But this is the extraordinary thing is that Abraham Lincoln, the president at the time, overturned it. Okay. It took time.
Yeah.
But when the highest levers of power actually protect you from an oppressive mandate, that says something about the nation that you're living in. And so the unique opportunity that we have for a full representation, full opportunity of freedom and citizenship and voting, we see that as being a place of privilege that we say now we want to make sure that expands to others as well.
I love that because, it's so tempting if you find safety or security as an individual or a group, it's so tempting to want to just sit in it and be like, okay, I got it, but
and there are people who do.
Sure. Yeah. And I think some people do what they can, and no judgment at all. But I love, when it extends to say, okay, if I'm okay for this moment, what can I do for others? Then I think that's a lovely thing. So tell me a little bit about like the advocacy work that you and your congregation engage in, here in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
So, we're always looking to be involved in combating hunger and poverty. Something that we're also take very seriously is our advocacy for the LGBTQ plus community. And, that's inspired by our religious values, but also because our membership, we're comprised of, people who are LGBTQ plus, and we want to make it clear that not only is this your religious home, but we're also here to stand by you and with you. You are our family, and we want to make sure that our congregation continues to express these values of our family. Yeah,
I think that's so unique. Because that's not everybody's experience with organized religion.
Makes me sad because I feel like it should be. And I do. I hear stories of trauma all the time, and it breaks my heart. And even some people that are cautious, they say, I really feel welcome at home at the temple, but they're so stung by organized religion in the past that they still feel very cautious. And the best I can do is sort of atone for we are part of organized religion, like it or not. And our attitude has not always been perfect. Judaism writ large, and even within Reform, we've evolved and developed, I think, a better attitude. And, even myself, I'm constantly learning.
Yeah.
I have not always been so wonderful in my attitudes towards this issue when I was younger. So I'm proud of the fact that I grow and keep my mind open and continue to learn.
So, what do you say to people who, their communities or their families, or even maybe their internalized, understanding of religion makes them feel like they have to choose between religion or, having a relationship with God and their identity or themselves? Because I feel like so many people are handed that choice just on the regular. We do live in the South. It's happening everywhere. But,
we do.
Yeah, we do. We really do. And
I can't figure out where the Mason-Dixon line actually starts. Oh, no, I know.
I'm so bad with geography. And living in Chattanooga, I kind of never know if I'm in Georgia or Tennessee. And once in a while, I end up in Alabama, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening.
Have you ever used Waze?
I should.
There's a lot of baggage to unpack in general because, when we grow up, we are told very specific things about religion. God said this is in the book, and you have to do this in order to please God. Yeah. And a lot of people fail to realize that there's a lot of nuance, that the question of where the origins of the book actually come from, are they directly God's mouth to Moses' hand?
Okay.
Should be up for question.
Sure.
I don't want to say anything overtly blasphemous here, but...
We want you to keep your job.
Well, no. Listen, my congregation knows
they
that
know you.
I'm on a fairly radical end of that. But even if it is all written by human beings, they are inspired by our desire to please God. Yeah. And our knowledge and the ways that we discover pleasing God should be ever changing. So that's one moment in time that's captured in a canonized book that we've spent thousands of years interpreting.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things in Judaism, is that it's an ongoing interpretation.
So that's part of that, like, reformed, like,
This is
evolutionary
Judaism writ large is into
really?
ongoing interpretation. There's a concept of the written Torah, which is the Tanakh, or the Bible.
Okay.
Tanakh is like a Hebrew acronym. And then there's the oral tradition, which is also said to be part of Revelation. So if you were among the most traditional on the origins, you would say that God spoke the Torah to Moses, which was written down.
Okay.
And then there's sort of the oral tradition, which the sages of every generation are able to then ascertain and discuss and dispute and then record. So all the Talmud, legal books, Midrash.
I didn't even know there were legal books. What's in the legal books?
The how to live a Jewish life, Jewish law.
Okay.
So when you say the book of Talmud or Shulchan Aruch, they're saying like this is what they call halakha. So they determine, which food you can eat, which food you can't eat, what you can do on the Sabbath, what you can't do on the Sabbath,
and
how you celebrate
change?
A holiday.
Or
Changes somewhat.
Okay. Okay.
If you ask the most traditional, let's say, well, no, it's always been this way, but we discover certain emendations over time, like, the Torah never talked about a light bulb. But the rabbis had to figure out, well, is a light bulb starting a fire on the Sabbath, or is it not starting a fire on the Sabbath? And they discuss these things, over time.
Fascinating.
In Reform, we take a little bit more of a Enlightenment approach where, you study and you can know what the legal things say, but at the end of the day, you, as an individual, make
use wisdom,
right?
Like context and all of that. So how do you see yourself, like, bridging that divide between, people having to choose, being truthful to themselves and having a spiritual, connection and faith basis? I think
right. I mean, it begins really with just creating a sense of welcome.
Yeah.
And beyond welcome, actually, we're starting to talk more about sense of belonging. Welcome is to say you're okay here, and as long as you conform to our quote unquote norms, which is not.
You can sit here.
Welcome is a start, right?
Yeah.
But to create a sense of belonging, it takes more effort for everybody, but particularly people who felt alienated. From religious institutions over time. I do think, at my temple, there are things that I do intentionally. Some look subtle, but it's intentional. There's a Jewish pride flag. I don't know if you saw it when you came in.
I don't think I did, but you told me about it.
So if you come into our office and administrative wing, one of the first things you can see is a Jewish pride flag. So pride flag with a Jewish star right in the middle. Yeah. And I think that's a way of saying that this is a place where we are affirming. And
you don't have to choose.
You don't have to choose, right? You be yourself.
So what are some of the things, like, that's kind of an introductory, like, visual representation of how you want them to feel belonging. What are some of the things that you do to kind of, because it is advocacy work, to make sure that people feel not just safe, but, accepted, and that, everything is for them. There's not just like, okay, you have access to this, but not all this.
Sometimes opportunities present themselves. Something simple, like somebody comes in and they let you know their pronouns. Yeah. And you acknowledge their pronouns. And if somebody misgenders another person, usually by mistake, there's never any ill intent, to say, their pronouns are they, them. Yeah. And, I do that with our staff, other congregants. We do help each other. So, we've had a few people in our religious school, young people, who are discovering their own gender identity. And immediately when they tell us what their gender is, or we hear from their parents, we say, okay, we notify the teachers. I love that. Yeah. Tell what this child's name is, and we affirm that. And that's not a little thing. I know that's not a little thing, but to me, it's sort of a small gesture that you can do to demonstrate the value that we have is that you belong here. You are made in the image of God, just like everybody else. And you also have a right to determine how we interact with you and refer to you. And we respect that. And anybody who fights people on that, I just don't understand what they have to gain by fighting it.
Yeah, I think, I've sat in rooms before. You'll have to forgive me if I get a little emotional about it, because I sat in rooms before with people who, just chafe at pronouns, and it's literally the smallest thing you could do, big for them. But the fact that it is big is just kind of heartbreaking, right? Like, why would we care, what somebody wants to be called? Like, you get to choose who you are and how someone talks to you. And I think my mind doesn't really, grasp that. And I think for so many people, it is tied into their experiences with organized religion or, other systems of power where
rejection.
Yeah.
I have heard, and I'm trying to be very vague, in some instances where somebody's experiencing a gender dysphoria and they're worried about being rejected, and it can lead to self-harm.
Yeah.
And if respecting somebody's gender identity can help save their life, it seems like an absolute. And there's a Jewish value. It's called pikuach nefesh. You do anything you can to save a life. Now, I can't guarantee that somebody will harm themselves, but if I can diminish the possibility that they're going to hurt themselves, seems like a no-brainer. Very easy to do. Yeah. If in one case somebody said, every day that this young person is continuing to live, this is not within our community here. This is other things that I've read about or heard. That's a bonus. Yeah. Because they are struggling to the point where they're feeling rejected. So the more that you can do to embrace and accept and affirm, again, I keep coming back to that word. It's a really important one.
I think that's like a really key word now, because just being like tolerant or aware is not the same as affirming. It's not the same. And I've had so many clients who it feels so unsafe. If you think about when we're growing up, when we're babies and children, if our caregivers reject us, we die. And there's so much of that knit into that attachment of just like, if the people that are my community don't accept me, I won't survive. It's almost like that very primal, instinct that we have. And, the idea of like triggering that in other people. And it's not just about being queer affirming, right? It's about, civil rights and safety for, our Black community members and our Asian community members. And, the list goes on, but the idea that we could be okay knowing that someone else is living in preventable pain or preventable fear, that just really seems so strange. Absolutely. And to speak out, I think, sometimes I question myself, am I proactive enough on all of these issues? Yeah. During COVID, when there was so much hatred towards the Asian American community, I feel like I spoke out, but maybe I could have done more, and there's lots of racial tension in our own city. And it's just knowing where and when can I offer my voice? How do I offer my voice? Who can I partner with on these issues? And it happens in, recent years. I've made very good ties with some organizations within the LGBTQ community. So, I have good relations there. Yeah. I have made some connections also within the, Black community as well. So there's work that I can be doing there as well. And then, there's also just the work I have to do at the temple. So it's all part. That job that you seem to have.
There's important teaching in Judaism that in the Talmud, that this too is Torah. So when you're living out your values, it doesn't actually have to be with a book in front of you. That if you are out there doing the work, that you're following the ethical teachings of the tradition, then you are practicing Torah. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really beautiful because that kind of bridges that space between, it is your religion, how you live and how you treat people and, the work that you do for others. And I think that can probably transcend like any religious, denomination or organization. I think you said something to me when we met before that really stood out to me. I think it was, and you'll have to like fix it if I say it wrong. If I can remember. You said that faith brings comfort, but religion brings pain.
And like that really stuck with me. And I don't know that like religion has to, but I think a lot of people have experiences with dogma or, doctrine. And maybe it was doctrine brings pain. It was doctrine brings pain and faith brings comfort or something like that.
I don't remember specifically, but I think the
Sounds
idea
like
that if you have doctrine is firm and unmoving, and I've done a sermon, and I've done this a couple of times where I say, actually, this was back when there was all this book banning. Became like heated discussion, and
so weird.
McMinn County was banning the book Mouse, a graphic novel about the Holocaust, and said, I'm against book banning. Yeah, and I said, but if I was going to ban one book, it would be, people lean in, Leviticus.
Okay.
And I said, all right, I'm waiting for the lightning to strike. The lightning didn't strike.
Yeah.
And I said, because just one verse in Leviticus has caused more pain and more alienation and more suffering for people than I think any single verse in the Torah has, because people laser beam on it and use it as a cudgel to hurt.
Yeah.
So I was corrected, and my own father, God bless him, I was talking about that sermon. He goes, well, you forgot one thing. And I said, what is it? He goes, Leviticus also has love your neighbor as yourself. It's like,
I'll keep that one.
Yeah, if only that was the first one that people turned to in Leviticus, we'd be better off. If you start from love your neighbor as yourself, you'd be in a much better place. I really have to confront that our sacred text has the verse that says, a man shall not lay with another man as he lies with a woman. And it's an abomination. But I also ask people, I say, actually, I was on a radio show at Wally's recently. They were recording at Wally's. So I said, how many people here ate bacon today? So I think, the Torah has a few opinions about eating pig. It's also an abomination. So, why would you focus on that abomination and be okay with this one? And, that's not the most winning argument in the world, but it does point out a lot of the hypocrisy that people practice.
Right. And then if you focus on loving your neighbor as yourself, if that's the biggest part, if that, compassion and helping and advocating and caring is the biggest part of how you live life, you can reorganize, priorities. And I don't know, and I could be wrong because I obviously haven't gone to school. I don't think you're wrong.
I think you and I are both perfectly right. Everybody else is just, they have no idea.
Yeah. But I think that I don't know. Maybe it's my willingness to live in the gray, but I'm okay not figuring out everything. Because of the things that I know, or the way that I live life, or the way that I view humans and my role in this world, if it means that I live this way and there's something that's an outlier, I don't know. I'm okay not reconciling or not knowing how to reconcile one thing or a thing.
From a religious point of view, I try and teach people to recognize the difference between knowledge and faith.
Okay. All right. Explain that.
Faith is believing that there is a God.
Yeah.
You can't say, I know.
Sure.
You can say it. And I know a lot of people who do. And a lot of people say, I know exactly what God wants, and God wants you to send me money, right? That, at the worst extreme, that's an abuse of the system. But, if you say, I know exactly what God wants, how do you know?
Yeah.
And there are people that claim that God talks to them on a regular night. I had an anti-LGBT protester last year at the temple who told me that he had spoken to God just that morning.
Okay. And God told him to be hateful.
God told him to go and be hateful and protest the rabbi. But I think that if you're willing to admit that there's things that I don't know, but I just put them in my faith column, then that creates the gray area you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know what God looks like.
Yeah.
I can't pretend to tell you that I know what God looks like, because Judaism actually says God has no form.
Okay.
Right. And so the knowledge of what God will and won't do, what God thinks, doesn't think, that's faith. I believe God likes it when I love my neighbor as myself, or I do an act of charity.
Yeah.
But I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference in how we allow ourselves to have that gray area to say, well, what I had faith in yesterday may not be the same as the faith I have today. I tell my congregation all the time, never stop thinking about it. Your faith should be a little bit different in 5 years from now than it is today. Why? Because you've been thinking about it, studying it, and experiencing life.
That's so interesting, because I feel like, the way I was raised especially is that like it should look the same. Like if you stray or get wider or bigger or grayer, and I think, being a therapist, I'm very happy in gray. Like that's like my aura is just gray areas.
Like my beard.
Yes. But like, I think there's a lot of religious institutions that are telling people like the way that you thought about it, or were taught it at this age, that it should stay the same and you should keep doing that. That's safe.
It's a tragedy. And I can really only speak mostly from the Jewish perspective because it's the only one I've lived inside of. We teach our children in religious school. They go to Hebrew school, and then they become a bar bat mitzvah at age 13.
Yeah.
And sometimes they never come back. Or they never come back to learn, right?
Okay.
So they'll come back as members, they'll come back for the holidays, things like that. But their actual engagement with learning stopped at age 13.
Wow.
Now they go on to study science, calculus, biology,
which all changes
finance,
from what you learned.
Right.
Yeah.
Their minds expand and they become brilliant in all these other things, but they're still thinking about God like a 13-year-old. And I think that, of course, we don't all have time for that like I do. It's my job. But I think that the more that you read and you study, you find that you're not alone in having those gray areas. And some of the best thinkers of all time have been trying to figure these questions out. And you can study at a high level, an adult level, if you choose to. Otherwise, you can continue to live in the adolescent mindset. And I think religion deserves adult mindset.
I think you're right. And I think that like that's where the breakdown happens too, is that like that understanding doesn't work with the things we experience as adults and the things that we know as adults and, what we see in the world and what happens in our own lives. I just don't think that mindset shows up well and is workable when you have trauma or, significant grief and loss,
if you're stuck in a mindset that says, God heals all the good people and all the bad people God punishes, and you think you've been a good person and, someone that you love gets stricken with a terrible disease and they're not saved. And I mean saved in a physical sense. Sorry,
Sure.
very clear on that one. Their lives are not saved and they die. Then you start thinking, maybe I am a terrible person despite all the good that you've done.
Yeah.
And that's where you need the growth mindset on that, is to say, whoa, what I believed before may not be entirely true. Let's search for a different way of exploring truth about what is the nature of our world and what is the nature of God.
I think we need that too when it seems like bad people like don't get justice. And I was looking at
Can you think of any examples?
Yeah. Like I never read the news. It's just always so negative.
Yeah.
And I saw something come across my news feed, and it was somebody, getting a ruling overturned. And it's just like that just feels so unfair and wrong. And if I didn't have some gray to kind of lead into, I think I'd have a really big struggle, like existentially,
Yeah, the only fair thing about that is recognizing that there are mechanisms within the justice system that make sure that trials are fair.
Right. Yeah.
I think I know you're talking about.
Yeah, you probably do.
Yeah. Terrible.
Terrible. Yeah. Very wicked.
Yeah.
Very wicked.
I don't think his life's going to get any better.
Yeah, and I think that's where I can kind of
He's going to get tried again. I don't think there's double jeopardy on this case. So, but again, the only comfort, that's not even divine justice we're talking about.
Human.
If there is divine justice, we'll let that play out later. But the best we can do is what we can control during our time here.
Which is to do all the good, that we can do. And we talked about this last time too of, I just figured like I can't, and this is very like elementary mindset probably, not very philosophical, but I can't be better than God, so if I can love somebody and I can accept them and I want them and I care about them and I am deeply interested in their well-being, then, and no matter like what they look like or what their sexual orientation is or, gender identity, whatever, if that's not an issue for me, then, I mean, if you do believe in God, he's got to be better than me. I'm not that great, I'm impatient sometimes, right. And I forget things, and my kids won't let me forget. I forgot to pick them up from school one day. It was like literally 6 years ago, and they're both fine. And they weren't alone. They were there, but I forget stuff. I drop the ball. So God has to be better than me on these issues.
Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God.
Yeah.
Micah, it's, what does it mean to walk humbly with God? Well, I don't think I can be better than, but I can strive to be what I believe to be as good as.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, in a certain sense, what is the purpose of our life here? Mm-hmm. I'm not for sure on what our purpose is, but what I try to believe is that if I am here for a reason, it is to do as much good as I can.
Yeah.
And to limit the harm. I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
I make plenty of mistakes. Just ask my wife. Yeah.
What was the Jewish saying that you said about like doing no harm? There was some like phrase that you were talking about like earlier. I'd have to remember.
I don't recall the specific one.
Yeah, there was like a principle that was like, to try to like not harm people or, prevent loss of life or something like that.
Well, pikuach nefesh was the phrase for, absolute need to save a life if given the opportunity.
Yeah.
And there's also like limitation of suffering.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
I think that's a lovely way to live. And so, we're recording this ahead of time because I'm a little type A and a bit of a planner. But, there's a lot going on in the world and in this country for, not just Jewish people, but, obviously Palestinians as well. It's just, there's so much pain, there's so much suffering, unrest, and lack of safety. And, how do you hold that, like knowing that suffering, especially as a religious leader, in your community? Jewish
people have long been acquainted with the idea that there are people that don't like us for no reason.
Fair.
Right. Mm-hmm. And it's not to dismiss it. It's the idea that it's just so out in the open now, mm-hmm. and is masked in so many awful ways, mm-hmm. That people say, well, I'm not, anti-Semitic. I don't hate Jews. I just hate the state of Israel and want it to be gone. So you want millions of my, right. Co-religionists to just disappear from this earth.
Yeah.
Or, to then become displaced. I will not say that the state of Israel has done anything or done everything even close to perfect, mm-hmm. in its existence and its history. Mm-hmm. But to call for an elimination of the state is to call for an elimination of millions of people who are acquainted with what it's like to lose millions of our own people in recent history.
Yeah.
But, we have to hold that in our minds and know that it's there. It's always been there, sometimes more under the surface than others, but also to try and build alliances, mm-hmm. and to never forget that, we still, at least in this country, live in a place of privilege where we can speak out freely, mm-hmm. Whichever side of any issue that we want to speak on, we are free to do so. Mm-hmm. You asked how I hold it. One of the harder times, obviously, was October 8th.
Yeah.
October 7th was the attack, 1,200, people inside of Israel murdered in their homes and at a dance party in the desert. Mm-hmm. Hundreds of hostages taken, and it was on a Jewish holiday. Mm. And we had to make the decision. It's a holiday. It's called Simchat Torah, the happiness of Torah. And you're supposed to take the Torahs out and dance with them.
Okay.
And do we still celebrate it? Well, we are a joy and life-affirming tradition. Also, the children needed to have the opportunity to celebrate this holiday, no matter what the adults were feeling. And so, mm-hmm. we still did the celebration. It was muted to some extent, to be sure.
Yeah.
And the next day was Chattanooga Pride, which we had at Mizpah had a booth rented. We'd paid for a booth, and we had organized to march in the parade.
Yeah.
And through that pain that we were feeling of the attack against our own people, we still recognized our value of needing to be present and let ourselves have the moment of reaching out to a community that matters to us, and to make sure that we were seen, and to not draw attention to the fact that we were in pain and suffering, though it was, people did ask, and it was refreshing that people were aware. But that was a day of celebration. And so put a smile on my face and was there, and following the news the whole time, and the reports kept coming out. But, you have to be able to do that. We mourn, we grieve, but we also can't just stop living.
Yeah.
And part of living is keeping our obligations, and part of living is also, standing up for the values that we believe in.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, it's our job as non-Jewish people to give the same allyship and support, to Jewish people, to your congregation here, and to, everyone deserves to live in safety. And just because you're advocating for the safety of other people doesn't mean that you don't deserve that right and privilege. And I recognize that you don't always have that, even in our community in which your congregation is very beloved and active. And so
all it takes is one person to ruin it, and that's why anytime that we have a service, there's an armed security guard present, and holidays, and when we have events, and our doors are locked. It's funny. I was telling a group of my teens recently. We actually took a group to Washington, D.C. to do some advocacy. But I was telling them how when I go visit a lot of my Christian colleagues, I can walk right in the front door.
Right.
Sometimes a side door, which I'm like, are you sure you want this side door open? Like, this doesn't seem like a good idea.
No fear.
Right. Whereas I walk around my building making sure that every door is closed, and they have to ring a buzzer to get in, and I have to set my eyes on whoever comes in. And we can't just take any chances at all with our grounds, but most importantly, we can't take any chances with our people.
Yeah. And I think that, that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize is still a reality for the people. We talk a lot in our advocacy work about, Asian Americans' lack of safety and all the horrific things that were going on during COVID-19 and still happen, and then our Black community as well, and how everyone deserves to live in safety, and so many things that we take for granted. They don't have that safety, or they have to think about things we don't have to think about. But I think it's important too, when we're talking about social justice advocacy, to realize that there's a lot of our Jewish community members that don't enjoy, especially when things are very tumultuous right now in the world, that don't, enjoy the same privileges of safety and not having to think about things that we do.
I appreciate that. And it is true, but there are, certain safety moments that I can take for granted that I don't have to worry. I don't have to have the quote unquote talk with my son.
Right. Yeah.
And I've heard politicians, I've heard people talk about it, from the African American community, talking about having the talk with their children about, if you see, or if you get pulled over or get confronted. And that's just crushing to think about that. That's an actual fear. And I also serve as a chaplain on the Chattanooga Police Department. So I understand, that a police officer has a need for safety, but it never supersedes a person's right to integrity and safety.
Absolutely.
And, every person should have a right to inherent safety and integrity, and not be suspected based on the color of their skin or what kind of T-shirt or sweatshirt they happen to be wearing.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I really have a hard time, and I try to at least express my empathy and understanding for that. Because it's not my reality. And
right.
If I can change it, I'm always looking for opportunities to help be a voice for change.
And I think that's one reason why, I love having you here today to have this conversation. I'm so grateful that we've been able to, because there are places that I'm privileged that you may not be, and places, things that I experience as a woman in the world that you don't experience. And then, for us to be able to advocate for other people groups that we don't have full intersectionality with. I think if everybody does what they can, if we all lend our power in the place that we have that, then we can live in safety and people can thrive and be well.
If you're in a place of privilege, to utilize that.
Yeah.
I think as a cisgendered, heterosexual, married man, I think that I have certain privilege that, if I can give up some of my own privilege to advance somebody else, then I'd be glad to.
Yeah. Well, and then you don't lose anything, right? When we help somebody else, we don't lose any part of ourselves or any part of our own thriving.
Sometimes you have to be willing to.
That is true too. Well, thank you for being willing to do the brave work that you do and for being here today.
Well, thank you for your work and the invitation. And
absolutely.
Always glad to have a new friend in the community, and maybe there's a lot of good things we can do together.
I would love that. And I'll swing by the office to catch the Disney tour soon. Thank you to our listeners for checking in on this episode of How Would You Rate Your Pain? Be gentle with yourselves, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to How Would You Rate Your Pain? Please subscribe on your favorite listening platform so you never miss an episode. And if this show made you think of someone, please share it with them to help us grow. I'm your host, Dr. Tiffany Bartell. You can find me on Instagram at @the_happy_therapist_. This show is not intended as medical advice and should not take the place of therapy or other mental health services. Please consult with your doctor or mental health provider about your own health. You deserve all the support. How Would You Rate Your Pain is co-produced by Wavelength Studios and Chattanooga Podcast Studios and is part of the Podnuga Network. Graphic design provided by Josh Wilhelm at JW Creates and music by Michael Crosa. I'm Dr. Tiffany Bartell. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time right here on How Would You Rate Your Pain?